Wonderland, an image in our mind that's likely tainted by the Disney animated film, where we imagine happy people, bright colors, and scenes that enchant us. This is not the world of Alice Madness Returns, the sequel to American McGee's Alice. McGee and other key members of the original team returned to the franchise 10 years later, renewing their vision of Alice's twisted Wonderland. As you'd imagine, you control Alice. She's not the bright, smiling child from the fairy tale, but instead has been rendered insane after the death of her parents in a horrible fire in London. Alice is drawn back into Wonderland after more than a decade, and finds it in a horrendous state. It's up to Alice to not only help Wonderland by spilling the blood and entrails of her enemies, but also to fight through literal manifestations of her insanity in order to find out who killed her parents. It's heavy stuff, at least in theory. So far all I've seen of Alice is the combat and platforming, with only sprinklings of story. The combat's fun though, akin to God of War, Darksiders, or any number of other action games. Alice isn't going to surprise anyone in this regard. You have an arsenal of quirky weapons at your disposal, such as a pepper grinder you can use as a machine gun, a teapot you use like a grenade launcher, and Alice's famous kitchen knife. The combat's fast and very pretty. With a little practice, anyone who's played these sorts of games before will have Alice dancing amongst her enemies, cutting them apart in a flurry of blood and beauty. It's beautiful watching as Alice dodges, for instance. Here she doesn't just do a roll like any number of games, but instead bursts into a wave of blue butterflies, reforming a few feet away. It's great looking, and just a taste of the stylistic choices the team's made. Enemies are also distinct looking, blending the aesthetic we expect of Wonderland with the insanity of Alice's own corrupted mind. The platforming segments of Alice seem like a decent way to break up the pacing, but they seem as familiar as the combat. Alice can do double jumps, glide if you hold down the jump button, and ride waves of air. It's interesting, but that stuff doesn't feel unique. However, Alice's ability to shrink does feel distinctly Wonderlandish. Alice can shrink at any time, giving her access to new areas and enabling her to see secret clues and platforms that are otherwise invisible. My big concern about Alice is that the art alone won't make it an outstanding game. The combat and platforming are mostly predictable. I get it. They want to make a game any gamer will immediately understand. It's just that if it isn't doing anything remarkable in this regard, it's going to have one hell of a story. And so far, I've seen very little of that. For more information on Alice Madness Returns, go to IGN.